the child of war, and the first duel age 13. The legend of Miyamoto Musashi transcends the boundaries of history and mythology. He was more than a samurai. He was the Kensei, the sword saint, a warrior who fought over 60 duels to the death and never suffered defeat. He was the philosopher who authored the Book of Five Rings, a treatise on strategy that is still studied by generals and CEOs worldwide. His life spanned the violent transition from Japan's bloody, warring states period Sengoku to the rigid peace of the Tokugawa Shogun, a journey that defined the essence of the solitary, perfect swordsman. Musashi was born around 1584, initially named Shinman, in the Miyamoto village of the Harima province, or possibly the Mimasaka province. His lineage was tied to the prestigious Shinman clan, though his early life was shrouded in chaos and uncertainty. His father, Shinman Munisa, was himself a master martial artist, skilled in both the sword and the jit, a parrying weapon. Munisa was a fierce, uncompromising man whose relationship with his son was fraught with difficulty. Musashi would later claim he never received any formal instruction from him. The absence of stable parental guidance, coupled with the endemic violence of the Sengoku Jidai, instilled in the young Musashi a wild, uncompromising nature. Musashi received little formal education, remaining largely illiterate throughout his life, focused instead on the raw, practical reality of combat. He was a product of an age where violence was not only common but sanctioned. The samurai class lived by the principle of Kirisugamen, the right to cut down and walk away, and a culture of personal duels and vendettas was the primary measure of martial excellence. Unlike later, refined generations of swordsmen, Musashi's early approach was pure, instinctual aggression, devoid of the complex rituals of the established schools. The pivotal event that set Musashi on his legendary path occurred in 1596, when he was only 13 years old. While residing in his village, a traveling samurai named Arima Kihei arrived. Kihei belonged to the Shintaraya school and was known for his proficiency with a longsword and lance. Arrogant and seeking to enhance his reputation through a public challenge, Kihei posted a notice in the village square, daring anyone to duel him. The young Takezo Musashi accepted the challenge with shocking recklessness. When Kihei was informed that his challenger was merely a scrawny, wild child, he laughed contemptuously, ordering Musashi to return later. Kihei arrived the next morning, expecting a trivial, ritualized contest, but Musashi was waiting. The samurai was armed with a sharp sword, while Musashi, dismissive of the established forms, chose to fight with a simple wooden stick or sword. The duel was brutal and swift. Kihei immediately attacked, drawing his sword. Musashi threw Kihei to the ground, pinning him. Then, in a moment that defined his future, Musashi did not pause for ritual or courtesy. He struck Kihei repeatedly with his stick until the samurai began coughing blood. Kihei, defeated and severely injured, died shortly after. The raw, merciless efficiency of the boys attacked the rejection of conventional rules in favor of utter victory shocked the spectators. That single, savage act at age 13 was the genesis of Musashi's legend. It showed that he possessed an innate, profound understanding of the moment of decision in combat, prioritizing the absolute termination of the enemy's fighting will over all else. The duel confirmed his singular path. With the blood of his first victim on his hands, Shinman Takezo left his village. He shed his family ties, formally adopting the name Miyamoto Musashi, and began his solitary life as a Ronin, a masterless samurai, dedicating every moment of his existence to the way of the sword. His eyes were now set on the chaos and the glory of the larger world, starting with the great military campaigns that would soon decide the fate of Japan, the Great Battle, and the destruction of the Yoshioka School. Miyamoto Musashi's early years were characterized not only by personal duels, but by participation in the great devastating military campaigns that defined the end of the Sengoku Jidai, Warring States period. In 1600, at the age of 16, Musashi took part in the nation-defining Battle of Sakiga. This was the colossal clash between the forces loyal to the nascent Tokugawa shogunate, the Eastern Army and the loyalists of the Toyotomi clan, the Western Army. Though historical records are scant, it is widely believed that Musashi fought on the losing side alongside the Western Army. For 3 days, over 160,000 men clashed in the fields of Sasaki. Musashi, a low-ranking foot soldier, survived the carnage, witnessing the final, brutal consolidation of power by Tokugawa Ieyasu. The defeat was crucial to Musashi's identity. It permanently cemented him as a Ronin, a masterless samurai, a figure now marginalized in the new era of planned peace. He was an outsider, bound by no lord, and utterly dedicated to survival and the perfection of his own fighting style. Following Sakigahara, Musashi embarked on his Musya Shugyo, the warrior's pilgrimage. This was a brutal, self-imposed journey of wandering and dueling, undertaken to prove and hone his skill. He rejected the established, ritualistic sword schools Raya, viewing their complex forms and esoteric names as useless posturing that masked a fatal lack of pragmatic combat sense. His style, forged in childhood duels and battlefield chaos, was unorthodox, aggressive, and solely focused on exploiting the enemy's mental and physical weaknesses. His pilgrimage quickly led him to Kyoto, the ancient capital and the spiritual center of the traditional samurai arts. Musashi, fully confident in his unique genius, intentionally sought out the most dominant and respected institution in the city, the Yoshioka School. The Yoshioka had been the official fencing instructors to the Ashikaga shoguns for generations, representing the pinnacle of refined, traditional swordsmanship. Destroying the Yoshioka School would be the ultimate statement of Musashi's superiority. Musashi first challenged the head of the school, Yoshioka Sayuri, a man of prestige and refinement, treated the rough, young Ronin with contempt, agreeing to a duel merely to dismiss him quickly. The duel took place outside the Ringain Temple. Musashi, already rejecting the formality, arrived late and rushed the master with a fierce, unpredictable attack. The contest was swift and humiliating. Musashi did not use a sharp blade, but a bokan wooden sword. He struck Sayuri down, crippling the master's left arm with a shattering blow. The head of the most prestigious school in Japan was defeated in front of his own students by an unwashed Onkamputo. Arnin Sayuri, shamed beyond measure, was forced to retire from swordsmanship. The shame could not stand. The responsibility for the family honor fell upon Sidro's younger brother, Yoshioka Shiru. Denshishira was the better warrior, specializing in the use of a choke and long wooden sword, and demanding a public duel using boken to the death. The duel took place on the large grounds outside Kyoto. The stage was set for a classic confrontation between established tradition and raw innovation. Musashi again arrived late, unsettling his opponent. When Denshishira attacked with a powerful, sweeping strike, Musashi used his trademark unpredictability. He evaded the initial blow, swiftly closed the distance, and then defeated Denshishira with a brutal single stroke to the head or body. Sources differ, but the result was terminal. Musashi did not pause. He simply sheathed his weapon and walked away, leaving the second master of the Yoshioka School lying dead on the ground. Musashi had, in 2 duels, destroyed the reputation and the leadership of the most famous sword school in Japan. This act instantly made him infamous, a genius to some, but a merciless assassin to the surviving Yoshi. The school would not stand for this disgrace. The remaining members, led by the youngest and most promising of the lineage, vowed a comprehensive, final vengeance. Musashi had signed his own death warrant, setting the stage for the most famous ambush in his career. The ambush at Ichijōji, and the genesis of the two-sword style. The destruction of the 2 Yoshioka masters Sayuri and Denshikiraya was an unforgivable insult to the samurai class. Musashi had not merely defeated the school, he had annihilated its prestige, and proved that its revered traditions were useless against pure, pragmatic genius. The remaining members of the Yoshioka School knew that they could not defeat Musashi in an honorable duel, so they abandoned honor entirely and sought total vengeance through assassination. The new head of the school was the youngest heir, Yoshioka Ka, sometimes called Hanshi, a boy who was skilled but lacked the experience of his older brothers. The Yoshioka challenged Musashi to one final duel, setting the meeting at the sprawling pine tree near the Ichijōji temple. In the darkness outside Kyoto, this was not a challenge. It was a carefully plotted ambush. The Yoshioka intended to lure Musashi to the location and then overwhelm him with a massive force of armed men, archers, and perhaps even early muskets. The goal was to eliminate the Ronin and restore the school's honor through sheer numbers. Musashi, however, was no mere warrior. He was a master strategist whose intuition bordered on the prophetic. He never underestimated the desperation of a cornered rival. He distrusted the grand, public location and recognized that the Yoshioka, having lost face, would stoop to any tactic. This confrontation became the first true display of Musashi's complete strategic insights. He rejected his previous habit of arriving late to unsettle his opponent. Instead, he arrived hours early. Under the cover of darkness, Musashi stalked the area, hiding himself near the Ichijōji pine tree, patiently waiting for the ambushers to arrive. When the Yoshioka forces finally approached, they did so not as duelists, but as an army. Dozens of armed swordsmen, archers posted on the ridges, and the young heir, Mata Shishira, at the center. They fanned out, searching for the expected late arrival. It was Musashi who struck first. He broke from the cover of the shadows and, in a breathtaking, preemptive move, rushed directly toward the center of the formation. Ignoring the surrounding swordsmen, Musashi focused all his lethal energy on the young heir, with a swift, crushing stroke. Musashi killed the boy, immediately cutting the head off the snake before the ambush could be fully executed. The leaderless Yoshioka group erupted into disorganized chaos and rage. Musashi was instantly surrounded by the remaining assassins. This was not a stylized, one-on-one duel. This was a desperate, multi-front fight for survival against dozens of enemies, intent on tearing him apart. It was in this moment of supreme peril that Musashi employed the unique, unorthodox technique that would define his legacy. The two-sword style Niton Ichiraier. He fought wielding both a katana longsword and a wakizashi short sword simultaneously. The use of two weapons at once baffled his assailants, providing him with a shield, a parry, and a strike on two different planes of attack. He moved constantly, utilizing the terrain and his profound understanding of geometry in combat. He cut a swath through the surrounding men, fighting his way out of the immediate encirclement. With the assassins now disorganized and demoralized by the death of their leader and Musashi's inhuman skill, he broke through the ranks and fled the scene, escaping into the hills and disappearing into the night. The aftermath was definitive. Musashi had successfully repelled a massive ambush, solidified the reputation of his new two-sword style, and utterly extinguished the prestigious Yoshioka School from history. He had proven that tradition, numbers, and honor were meaningless against a warrior whose sole guiding principle was absolute, strategic victory. The bloody path of the Musha Shugyo had not only made him a master, but had transformed him into the most feared man in Japan. The ultimate rivalry, Sasaki Kojirō, and the Island Duel. Having permanently silenced the traditional sword schools of Kyoto through ruthless efficiency, Miyamoto Musashi was now the most infamous and celebrated swordsman in Japan. But his legend could not be complete without facing his exact antithesis, the one rival who commanded equal awe and talent, Sasaki Kojirō. Kojirō was known by the chilling nickname, the Demon of the Western Provinces, or sometimes the Swallow Cutter, due to his legendary ability to slice a flying swallow from the air with his blade of feet that spoke up. Impossible speed and precision. Unlike Musashi, the rough, wandering Ronin, Kojirō was a man of refinement and prestige. He was formally trained, elegant in his movements, and enjoyed the patronage of powerful nobles. His signature weapon was the Manahoshi Zao, The drying pole, an unusually long Nadashi field sword, which, at over 3 feet long, gave him immense reach, and his technique, the swallow cut, was considered the height of swordsmanship. The duel between Musashi and Kojirō was an inevitable collision between two philosophies. Musashi, the unconventional master of pragmatic chaos and the two-sword style, versus Kojirō, the refined genius of tradition, elegance, and reach. The outcome would not just determine the greatest living swordsman, it would determine the true essence of the way of the sword. The duel was formally arranged in 1612, facilitated by Musashi's patron, an official under the powerful Hosoka. The location chosen was the remote island of Ganryū-jima, an isolated sandbar in the Kanman Strait, which soon became known as Ganryu-jima. Kojirō's island, named after his own school. The isolated setting emphasized the high political stakes and ensured that the duel would be free from the interference of either man's followers. On the morning of the duel, the psychological warfare began immediately. While Kojirō and the officiating nobles waited on the island, Musashi was nowhere to be seen. He arrived 3 hours late, a deliberate act designed to disrupt Kojirō's focus, test his legendary patience, and paint Musashi as a careless, disrespectful savage. When Musashi's boat finally approached the island, he appeared disheveled, unwashed, and wearing only a thin tunic, looking less like a master samurai and more like a beggar. Most crucially, Musashi had no sword. During the short boat ride to the island, he had used a carpenter's knife to hastily carve a massive Bakken wooden sword from a discarded oar. This move was pure genius. The wooden sword was not only longer than the standard Bakken, but was specifically sized to surpass the immense reach of Kojirō's Mana-Hushi-Zao, turning the longer sword's advantage against its master. As Musashi stepped onto the island, Kojirō flew into a rage at the disrespect. Drawing his magnificent longsword and tossing his scabbard into the waves, Musashi immediately taunted him. "Kojirō, you are finished. A true swordsman never throws away his scabbard." Kojirō struck first, executing his signature swallow cut, an incredibly fast diagonal strike aimed at Musashi's head. The tip of Kojirō's blade sliced Musashi's headband or hair, narrowly missing the skull. Musashi, however, had calculated the exact reach. Before Kojirō could recover from the movement, Musashi responded with a powerful overhead counterstrike from his long wooden oar sword, crushing Kojirō's skull and killing him instantly. Musashi bowed to the officials, quickly sheathed his short sword, and immediately returned to his boat. He did not pause to savor the victory or claim a trophy. He had defeated the greatest rival in the country with a crude, self-made weapon, cementing his status as the undisputed master of the sword. The duel at Ganryu-jima was the final great external confrontation of Musashi's life. With this ultimate victory achieved, Musashi vowed to never again fight a duel to the death with a human opponent, shifting his focus from external conquest to internal, spiritual mastery, the core of his later philosophy. The shifting path, war, peace, and the adoption of Iori. Following the ultimate duel at Ganryu-jima in 1600, Miyamoto Musashi, now the undisputed champion of the sword, fulfilled his vow. He largely abandoned dueling to the death. The focus of his Musha Shugyo warrior's pilgrimage fundamentally shifted. He realized that true mastery was not about winning a duel through technique, but about achieving strategic victory, the ability to understand and defeat an opponent before the blades were even drawn. This period marks Musashi's transformation from the ruthless killer of the Sengoku period into the philosophical master of the Tokugawa era. This transformation was immediately tested by the final great military conflict in Japan, the Siege of Osaka, 1614–1615. The powerful Toyotomi clan, heirs of the great unifying warlord Hideyoshi, held Osaka Castle and resisted the authority of the newly established Tokugawa shogun. Musashi, seeking legitimacy, employment, and the chance to test his strategies in large-scale warfare, cast his lot with the powerful Tokugawa side. Musashi served as a military strategist and commander during both the winter and summer campaigns of the siege. This experience was invaluable. It was a shift from the isolation of one-on-one combat to the complex logistics and maneuvering of thousands of men. The siege was brutal, culminating in the complete destruction of the Toyotomi forces and the burning of Osaka Castle. Musashi survived, having proven his strategic competence beyond the sword. By fighting on the winning side, he signaled his acceptance of the new, stable peace, the Pax Tokugawa, securing his place in the new order. With peace finally established in Japan, the role of the Ronin shifted from wandering duelist to potential military retainer. Musashi began to settle down, entering the service of several powerful lords, notably the Ogasawara clan in Hirema province. Here, he traded his vagabond life for the stability of a paid retainer, serving as an advisor and overseer of construction projects, applying the same strategic principles of efficiency and geometry he used in combat. Crucially, it was during this period that Musashi took on the responsibility of a family man. He formally adopted a young boy named Iori, believed to be the son of his deceased brother. The adoption of Iori was a defining moment. It forced the solitary killer to confront the idea of legacy and teaching. The man who had refused all formal instruction now had to distill his savage, instinctive genius into structured, teachable lessons for the next generation, a process that directly led to the eventual creation of his seminal work. Freed from the necessity of constant dueling, Musashi also began to express his profound philosophical perspective through art. He excelled in sumi, inkwash painting, calligraphy, and sculpture. His famous works, such as the painting Kobu Cormorant and Shrike, are masterpieces of Japanese minimalism. His art reflects the very core of his sword philosophy. No wasted effort. Every brushstroke is essential, direct, and final, a philosophical equivalent of the single, decisive cut. As the years passed, Musashi systematically codified the teachings of his Nitten, Ichijōji or two-sword style. He was preparing not just to teach Iori, but to pass on the culmination of his life's dedication to the way of the sword, realizing that the ultimate goal of the warrior was not just to defeat the enemy's body, but to master the self. This internal journey would lead to his final, most lasting legacy, the writing of the masterwork that encapsulates the mind of the sword saint. The summit and the final retirement to reach. By the 1630s, Miyamoto Musashi was no longer the wandering Ronin but a figure of immense respect. His adopted son Iori was now a trusted retainer, and Musashi himself was serving under the great Osaka, the daimyo feudal lord of the Kumamoto domain in Kyushu. This was Musashi's most secure position, treating him with the reverence due to the greatest martial master in the land. The stability allowed him to deepen his philosophical study, exploring the ultimate connection between his martial path and the principles of Zenda, concept of Kenzen, Ichino sword and Zen, as one. However, peace in Japan was not absolute. In 1637, the final large-scale armed uprising against the Tokugawa shogunate erupted, the Shimabara Rebellion. This was a massive peasant and Ronin revolt, led by Christian converts and fueled by economic misery, cornering the rebels within the formidable Hara Castle. Musashi, now in his mid-50s, served as an officer on the staff of the shogunate forces besieging the castle. The siege of Hara Castle was brutal, slow, and characterized by starvation and artillery bombardment rather than glorious samurai duels. This was Musashi's final experience of warfare, a grim, drawn-out affair far removed from the swift glory of Saki. In a symbolic ending to his life as a warrior, Musashi was not struck by a sword or a musket ball, but by a simple stone thrown, by a defender, a minor, non-fatal injury, but a final reminder of the chaos of conflict. His participation in the Shimabara Rebellion successfully signaled his loyalty to the shogunate, cementing his respectable status in the new era. Following the suppression of the rebellion, Musashi's life took its final, decisive turn toward asceticism. He was offered a highly privileged, permanent position as a retainer, but he declined, The man who had spent his life seeking victory and worldly perfection now sought something beyond physical combat or political status. He sought absolute mastery of self. He chose to shed all pretense of comfort and luxury, embracing the simplicity of the hermit. In 1643, at the age of 59, Miyamoto Musashi retired completely from the world. He moved to the remote, isolated Reigandō Cave Spear Rock Cave on Mount Kinpu, outside of Kumamoto. This was a final, intentional withdrawal. The cave was small, damp, and austere, providing nothing but rock and silence. He brought with him only a few simple supplies, his scrolls and his writing instruments. Musashi believed that this environment of isolation and self-imposed austerity was essential for distilling the essence of his lifelong pursuit. In the solitude of Reigandō Cave, Musashi began his final, most profound mission. His patron, Hosokawa Tadatoshi, had requested a written account of his unique martial philosophy. Musashi knew his health was failing, and he had little time left. He began the intensive process of committing his entire life's knowledge to the lessons of 60 duels, 2 major wars, and decades of solitary philosophical training too. Paper. This sacred text, composed in the dark, cold silence of the cave, would become the Gorin no Sho, the Book of 5 Rings. The Book of 5 Rings, and the eternal legacy, isolated in the damp, quiet solitude of Reigandō Cave. Miyamoto Musashi dedicated his remaining years to the completion of his masterwork. Knowing his strength was failing, he poured the entirety of his life's dedication, his 60 undefeated duels, his battlefield experience, and his profound philosophical insight into the text, commissioned by his patron, Hosokawa Tadatoshi. The Gorin no Sho, the Book of 5 Rings. The text is structured not as a manual of sword techniques, but as a systematic treatise on strategy, reflecting the 5 rings of existence. The Book of Earth serves as the introduction, emphasizing the importance of foundation, discipline, and the way of the warrior, the Nitten Ichijōji, as a path to be applied universally. The Book of Water details the fluid movements, adapting to the enemy, the stance, and the mindset required in battle fluidity over rigidity. The core concept of the two-sword style, the Book of Fire, focuses on the psychology and tactics of fighting, the speed and chaos of the battle itself, including when to strike and how to press an advantage. The Book of Wind, a critique of other sword schools, exposing the weaknesses and posturing of traditional styles, justifying Musashi's ruthless, unconventional approach. The Book of Void, the philosophical summit. It describes the state of non-attachment, the highest level of mastery where the mind is free from distraction and illusion, allowing for spontaneous, perfect action, the ultimate goal of the sword saint. The Gorin no Sho is primarily a strategic guide, teaching readers to look past the surface of things, to understand the rhythm of confrontation, and to use the body and the mind as one coordinated, lethal weapon. Musashi emphasized the concept of timing hyoshi, not just the timing of the blow, but the psychological timing of the entire confrontation, knowing when to strike, when to wait, and when to disarm the enemy's will. Just a few days before his death, Musashi completed one final, profound document, the Decade, the Way of Solitude. This was a personal, ascetic testament, 21 guiding precepts for a man determined to live without fear, dependence, or worldly entanglement. Precepts included: accept everything just the way it is. Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Never regret what you have done, and do not fear death. The Decade was the final, spiritual culmination of his journey, confirming that the ultimate purpose of the warrior was not to defeat others, but to achieve absolute inner mastery. Miyamoto Musashi died in Reigandō Cave on May 19, 1645. Shortly after completing his definitive works, at the age of 61, he did not die in a glorious battle or a decisive duel, but peacefully, on his own terms, a final, profound victory over the chaotic fates that had marked his birth. The contrast between the wild, 13-year-old child who killed Arima, Kihei with a wooden stick, and the serene hermit who wrote a guide to universal strategy is Musashi's greatest legacy. His teachings passed down through his adopted son, Iori, and his students ensured the survival of the Nitten Ichiraya. Two sword style. More importantly, the Book of Five Rings transcended the sword arts. It is studied globally by philosophers, strategists, and business leaders, a timeless guide to achieving victory through non-attachment, rigorous self-discipline, and unyielding strategic focus. Musashi remains the eternal icon of the solitary master, the ultimate synthesis of brutal efficiency and philosophical depth. The undisputed sword, Saint whose mind, proved to be his deadliest weapon.